As mentioned in the previous video about Lil C-Style, I wanted to cover the differences between the original LBC Crew album as it was intended to be and the version released by WideAwake/Death Records in 2011, and that's exactly what we will cover in this video. But before I go into depth about all the tracks and differences between the albums, I would first like to briefly cover some relevant background information, and a lot of information and details about the LBC Crew was already covered in the video that I recently uploaded about Lil C-Style. So for now we'll just do a short recap. And the LBC Crew was the first group signed to Doggystyle Records, and that was a sub-label of Death Records around the time that Snoop Dogg was working on his second album, Tha Doggfather. And the group consisted of 3 members, and they were Lil C-Style, Badass and Techniec. And Death Records had paid for studio time at Can-Am Studios for Snoop so he could work on his Doggfather album to be released in '96. And if you want to know more about the Doggfather album and all the leftover tracks, make sure to check out this video that you can find on the channel. And in addition to recording for the Doggfather, Snoop Dogg also used his studio time to work on the first album of his new group, the LBC Crew. And the title for the album was Haven't You Heard, and Snoop Dogg was the CEO and executive producer, as can also be seen on the reference sheet of the original album. All tracks on the album were mixed by DJ Pooh and Dave, and Big C-Style was responsible for the management of all Doggystyle artists. And for various reasons the album was ultimately not released. One of the reasons is that Suge Knight was not fully behind it because the studio time was reserved for Snoop's album Tha Doggfather and not for the LBC Crew album. And in addition, the Dogg Pound's first album Dog Food was first scheduled because they already had created a buzz with featurings on Dr. Dre's album The Chronic and also on Snoop's album Doggystyle. And by the way, if you want more information about the Chronic studio sessions and all the leftover tracks that were recorded but not released on the album, then make sure to check out the video that I made about the Chronic that you can find on the channel. But now back to the story. So the LBC Crew album was finished before the Dog Food album was finished, but it wouldn't be quite the right timing to release the LBC Crew album before Dog Food. And I will make an extensive breakdown video of the Dog Food album and all the leftover tracks. And in an interview that Snoop Dogg had done, he also hinted at another reason why the LBC Crew album wasn't released in the 90s, and that was that there had been a dispute between Snoop Dogg and Lil C-Style. And according to Snoop, Lil C-Style felt that he wasn't being paid enough, and therefore he broke the tape for the album. And he also left the group. And that was also the reason why Lil C-Style was not featured on the album Tha Doggfather, while the other members of the LBC Crew, Badass and Techniec, were. And Snoop then used a number of tracks such as Blueberry and Gold Rush that were actually intended for the LBC Crew album for his album Tha Doggfather, and also a couple of LBC Crew tracks can be heard on skits and interludes on Tha Doggfather, and another LBC Crew track was used for a skit for the Dogg Pound's Dog Food album. And I will go more into detail about those tracks, skits and interludes later in this video. So that was just a quick recap, and now let's dive straight into all the differences between the original LBC Crew album as it was intended to be and the WideAwake/Death Row release in 2011. The title Haven't You Heard from the original album was also used for the album released in 2011 by WideAwake/Death Row. Although the original album was never officially released, it was leaked online and is now in the hands of several collectors. Over here you can see an image of the CD of the original album, and it says Snoop Compilation and the date January 30th, 96, and also the word Ref is written on it, which stands for Reference Album. And here you can see the track lists for both albums. On the left you can see the track list for the original album, and on the right you can see the track list for the album that was released in 2011. And a reference sheet of the original album can also be found online, and this is the same as the original track list, but for several tracks different spellings have been used to mention the titles, which I will go into more detail later in this video. The original album and the 2011 release both have 14 tracks on it, and most of the songs appear on both versions, but some tracks are different in terms of mixdowns, beats and extra additions of elements such as sounds and vocals. And the biggest differences are mainly in the last 4 tracks of the album. And in this video I will go through the tracks one by one and follow the order of the track list of the original album, and I will also cover more background information about all the tracks and differences compared to the original album and the album that was released in 2011. And overall the sound quality of the original album sounds more clearer compared to the 2011 album, but this can feel better or different per track. So now let's start with the breakdown for each track on the album. And the first track we will discuss is the intro. On the track list of the original album is listed as the intro, and on the reference sheet for the original album it's listed as Intro to the Indo, and the tracklist of the 2011 release lists the first track as Haven't You Heard. The track duration of the intro on the original album is 4 minutes and 34 seconds, and the track duration of the WideAwake release is 4 minutes and 23 seconds. And the intro on the original album added some extra stuff before the track begins. And up next you can hear a clip of the 7 seconds that were added at the beginning of the track as it was on the original version of the album.
While waiting for justice to be served, Snoop continues to do work in the community that's been overshadowed by his bad dog reputation.
Just trying to stay real, man.
And the intro on the WideAwake released album in 2011 directly starts at this point.
Just trying to stay real, man.
Furthermore, the tracks are identical, and this is also the track in which Snoop mentions Bad Boy Records. As I already mentioned in the video about the beef between Snoop and Suge and Death Row in part 1.
It ain't hard to tell, but it's easy to see, and even no bad boy f***ing up the industry. We, the G-Funk family.
As you can see on the credits on the reference sheet for the original album, the track was written by Snoop and Big Pimpin'. Big Pimpin' also does some smooth talking over the beat, and Salim H. Grant did the background vocals, and the beat was produced by Superfly and it was mixed by DJ Pooh. And Snoop arranged the track. The beat goes hard and it's a solid track to start the album with. The second track that is listed on the track list of the original album is Out the Moon, and it's stated the same way on the reference sheet for the original album and also on the WideAwake release in 2011. And this is basically the same version that is released on the Gridlock movie soundtrack, but with Lil C-Style's original verse instead of Tupac's verse. And on the WideAwake release, Out the Moon is the third track on the album, and the second track is Dippin' in My Lolo. And on the original album, Out the Moon is the second track and Dippin' in My Lolo is the third track. So for some reason they switched the second and the third track on the WideAwake release. The track duration of the track on the original album is 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And the reason for that is because on the original album they added an outro at the end of the track, and on the WideAwake release this same interlude can be heard at the beginning of the track Dippin' in My Lolo. And up next is a clip of the interlude that I'm talking about.
Boom, 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 boom. What's cracking? Oh, you ain't heard?
So on the WideAwake release, this interlude or this outro can be heard at the beginning of the track Dippin' in My Lolo instead of at the end of Out the Moon. And besides that, the playback speed of the track on the WideAwake release is also a fraction faster than the version that's on the original album. This difference is barely noticeable, but it's also a reason why the track duration of the version on the original album is slightly longer. And as you can see on the credits for this track on the reference sheet of the original album, the track is written by Badass, who was also known as Mr. B.A.D. in the early days when he started rapping. And that's how he also introduced himself when the LBC Crew performed at an episode of Soul Train.
Let's get some names. Techniec. I'm Big Trey, Lil Style,
South Central,
and Mr. B.A.D. All right.
And besides Badass, the other members of the LBC Crew, Techniec and Lil C-Style, can be heard on the track, and also Superfly and Trey D were featured on the track, and Snoop Dogg is mentioned for the background vocals, but this is not entirely correct because he does the vocals on the chorus, and that can be clearly heard on the track, so that's something different than background vocals. The beat was produced by Superfly, LT Hutton and Snoop Dogg, and the drums were done by somebody named Young Buck. The track was mixed by DJ Pooh and it was arranged by Snoop.
And you know that G sound boom, and the speakers go boom, 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 boom.
And that brings us to the third track on the original album, and that's Dippin' in My Lolo. And on the reference sheet the title is the same, but it's spelled different. And as I already mentioned, this track is the second track on the WideAwake release instead of the third, because it has been swapped with Out the Moon. The track duration on the WideAwake release is 4 minutes and 51 seconds, and the reason for that, I have already mentioned that as well. That's because they placed the interlude of Out the Moon at the beginning of Dippin' in My Lolo on the WideAwake release. And it's also noticeable that at some parts of the WideAwake release, some white noise or distortion can be heard throughout the track. And for example, this is noticeable at 2 minutes and 58 seconds, 3 minutes and 11 seconds, and 3 minutes and 49 seconds, where you can clearly hear that the quality is not quite good. And it's a bit sloppy that they put this version of the track on the official WideAwake release, because the overall quality of the version on the original album is considerably better. And up next you can hear a clip of the track as it was released on the WideAwake album, and pay attention to the distortion that can be heard when Snoop says, "From the beach you can flow so."
Dipping in my Lola, And I'm looking for it's from the beach you can floss out.
All the shit I do was straight illegal.
The reference sheet lists Techniec, Coco Loc from the Lowlifes, Lil C-Style, Soul Central and Trady as track writers, and Snoop Dogg is mentioned for the background vocals, but just like with Out the Moon, this is not entirely correct because Snoop Dogg does the vocals on the chorus. The beat was produced by The White Guy and Dave Slang, and the track was mixed by DJ Pooh and arranged by Snoop. An alternate version can also be found online with the title LBC Crew, Dippin' in My Lolo original version 2 with the same beat but different vocals and without Snoop, Trey D, Soul Central, Lil C-Style, and I don't know exactly who the rappers are on this version, but Techniec is one of them, and I think the other rappers are from Badass, Click, The Lowlifes, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And up next you can hear a small clip of that version.
Gotta keep your head above the surface, keep it Doggystyle service. It seems like I can't see you ahead of me now, and let's see the story, and of course put it right back down where it's supposed to be.
And you might have also noticed that Dippin' in My Lolo can also be heard on the skit Traffic Jam that was on the album Tha Doggfather, in which you can hear
DJ Easy Dick
announcing the track Doggyland.
DJ Easy Dick will give you a stomach cold groove. Let's all go to Doggyland, huh?
In the future I will also make a video about Ricky Harris, who was featured on many tracks with skits he did as DJ Easy Dick and also as
DJ Salty Nuts.
So stay tuned for that. And now let's go over to the next track, which is the 4th track on the original album, and that's Get Up to Get Down. And on the WideAwake release, this is also the 4th track on the album. And basically the track on the original album and the WideAwake release are pretty much identical. The track features Soul Central, Lil C-Style, who is also known as Lil Style, Badass, Techniec, and a couple of rappers from Badass group The Lowlifes, including Shorty K, Lil J, and Showshot. It's a laid-back track with a smooth beat produced by Snoop and Superfly, and the drums were done by LT Hutton. The track is mixed by LT Hutton and DJ Pooh and arranged by Snoop. And up next you can hear a small clip of the track.
Get up and get down, get up and get down.
All you suckers
Get up and get down, get up and get down.
The 5th track on the original album is Doggystyle 96, and on the track list as well as on the reference sheet it's spelled the same way. This track was not released on the LBC Crew album released by WideAwake in 2011, but it was released 2 years earlier on another WideAwake release, which was the Ultimate Death Row Collection in 2009. On this album the track duration was 4 minutes and 27 seconds, and on the original album the track duration is 4 minutes and 35 seconds and therefore 8 seconds longer. The tracks are the same, but the playback speed on the Ultimate Death Row Collection is slightly faster, but that's hardly noticeable when you listen to the track. This track features the LBC Crew members Badass, Techniec and Lil C-Style, and also Deadly Threat and Warren G can be heard on the track. Snoop is listed again as the background vocals on the reference sheet, but he does the chorus on this song. The beat is bumping and produced and mixed by DJ Pooh, and he arranged the track together with Snoop Dogg.
1996, Doggystyle get you jumping like blazing tits. You see, this one's for me and you, and it's strictly from the LBC Crew.
The 6th track on the original album is Beware of My Crew, and as you can see, on the original tracklist the title is spelled different compared to the reference sheet, and it's not mentioned in the title, but this is the DJ Pooh remix version, which has a different beat compared to the music video version, and for some reason they used the version with the clean vocals for the original album. And in the 90s, the original version of Beware of My Crew was released on the movie soundtrack for A Thin Line Between Love and Hate. There are a few alternate versions of this version on YouTube that are very similar. And a fun fact is that in the movie A Thin Line Between Love and Hate, all the members of the LBC Crew can be seen in a scene where they performed Beware of My Crew in a club. And Snoop Dogg also can be seen in this movie for a couple of seconds. And in the 90s, the LBC Crew also appeared in an episode of Soul Train where they performed the track Beware of My Crew.
Fan, you hear when you hear that. Burning desire to get this rap game stretched down to the wire. Side similar to a man hit you. Ready in the dance for Chevy Suburban. Some the fucking I be ready to swerve.
When the dog found killer step next to see, I'm trying to mess the mirror and CIX me think. Now that's gangsta.
The reference sheet lists Trady, Techniec, Badass, Lil C-Style and Soul Central as the writers of the song, and Roger Troutman is listed as the background vocals. The track was produced and mixed by DJ Pooh, and Superfly played the keyboards. The 7th track on the original album is Baby Come Home, and that's how the title is also stated on the track list as well as on the reference sheet. This track was also released on the WideAwake release in 2011 and is the 6th track on that album. The tracks on both albums are identical, and on the tracklist for the original album they made a mistake because they only mentioned that the song was 3 minutes but they didn't add the seconds. This track was written by So Central, who was also known as South Central, and on this track she made it clear that she can not only rap well but that she can also sing very well because she does a great job singing on this track. The beat is produced by Dave Slang and he also arranged the track together with So Central, and the track was mixed by DJ Pooh, and you may have noticed that this track can also be heard in the background of the skit When I Grow Up, which can be heard on the album Tha Doggfather before the track Snoop Bounce begins.
Anything, just don't never let me hear you say you want to be like me. You hear me? Now take these dollars and go give them to your brothers and your sisters. You run on the school.
Thanks, Snoop.
The 8th track on the original album is Flossin', and on the reference sheet you can see that it's spelled slightly different. The track was also released on the WideAwake release in 2011 and it was also the 8th track on that album, and the tracks are the same on both albums. On the reference sheet it says that the track was written by Trady and Badass, but they forgot to mention Lil C-Style because he does the 3rd verse on this song. There's also a rough demo version of this track, and this version also has some extra ad-libs. For example, at the end of Lil C-Style's verse you can hear that he says a couple of things that were not included on the final version.
Yes, floss. Yeah. And that's what I look at the paper.
As you can also see on the reference sheet, the background vocals were done by Salim H. Grant and Baby Girl, and Salim H. Grant also produced the beat together with Superfly. The track was arranged by Trady, Snoop, Salim, and it was mixed by DJ Pooh. Flossin' was also released on the album The 19th Street LBC compilation in 1998. The 9th track on the original album is titled 1213. That is how the title was also on the reference sheet. This track was also released on the WideAwake release, and on that album it is the 12th track instead of the 9th track on the album. There are no differences, only the outro is slightly longer, making the track duration of the track on the WideAwake album 2 seconds longer. And on this track they also used a couple of lyrics that were also used in the track titled 6 Shooter. And 6 Shooter was also recorded during the studio sessions for the LBC Crew album, but ultimately it wasn't included on the final tracklist of the original album, and it also didn't make it on the 2011 WideAwake release. But it was released on another WideAwake/Death Row release on the album The Ultimate Death Row Collection compilation album in 2009, on which the track Doggystyle 96 also appeared. And on the chorus of the track 1213, lyrics by Snoop are used that were also used for the track 6 Shooter in the opening line of Techniec, who did the first verse on 6 Shooter.
Business to attend to, no time to play for fun. 6 Shooter, thought you knew this how the West was won. Number 1.
Business to attention, no time to play for fun. 6 Shooter, thought you knew that's how the West was won. Business to attention, no time to play for fun. 6 Shooter, thought you knew that's how the West was won.
The rapper McGruff can also be heard on 1213 and also on 6 Shooter, and he also used the same lyrics on both tracks.
If dodging, come on, man, back. CD selling spot bags. I'm dodging bullet bags. The lead 30 PG and shotgun bullet contains a mod BB. If dodging, come on, man, back. CD selling spot bags. I'm dodging bullets fast. The lead 30 PG and shotgun bullet contains a mod BB.
The beat from 1213 was also used by Snoop Dogg and Nate Dogg for the 92.3 radio drop, and that track is also known as Don't They Know.
Don't they know? Don't they know?
On the reference sheet you can see that Techniec, Trady, Superfly and Dez are the writers of the song. Snoop Dogg is mentioned again for the background vocals together with McGruff and Dez. The beat is produced by Dez and Superfly, and the track is arranged by Snoop, and this track was also mixed by DJ Pooh. The 10th track on the original album is titled I'll Smoke to That, and on the reference sheet the title is the same but spelled different. This track is also on the WideAwake release, and it's the 11th track instead of the 10th track on that album. Playback speed on the WideAwake release is slightly faster, making the track duration 5 minutes and 4 seconds, which is 9 seconds shorter than the version on the original album, which has a track duration of 5 minutes and 13 seconds. On the reference sheet you can see that the track is written by Deadly Threat, Techniec and Badass. The background vocals are credited to Snoop Dogg, DJ Pooh and Salim H. Grant. But on this track Snoop Dogg can also be heard on the chorus and also on the first seconds of the intro.
I ain't never seen a dog in a zoo.
It's like that, y'all.
For some reason, no producer is listed on the reference sheet, but the credits of the WideAwake album list Snoop Dogg and DJ Pooh, producers of this track. It's a nice up-tempo G-Funk beat. The track was arranged by Snoop and DJ Pooh, and the keyboards were done by Bernie Werdel. And DJ Pooh is also the one who mixed this track. And that brings us to the last 4 tracks of the album, and as mentioned in the beginning of the video, here are the biggest differences compared to the version that was released by WideAwake. And the 11th track is Feels Good to Be DPG, and on the reference sheet the title is stated like this. And the track was also released on the WideAwake album and is the 5th track on that album, but this is a completely different version than the version that was intended for the original album. And the beat of this track on the original album is a completely different mixdown, which makes the beat sound very different from the version that was released by WideAwake. Up next is a small clip from the version that was intended for the original album, and after that you can hear a clip from the version that was released on the WideAwake album.
I got to say damn, the program that up and flip. Fool I used to run with trust and snitch. Got one time on my block like posted, hoping that I slipped, but I dipped and ghosted. I got to say damn, the program that up and flip. Fool I used to run with trust and snitch. Got one time on my block like posted, hoping that I slipped, but I dipped and ghosted.
And on the original version you can also hear some extra background vocals from Snoop Dogg.
Body kick.
Hell yeah.
Damn, it feels good to be DPG.
Ashes to ashes and dust to dust.
Body kick.
Yeah.
Damn, it feels good to be DPG.
Ashes to ashes and dust to dust.
The intro of the track that was used for the original version is also completely different as the intro that was used for the version on the WideAwake release.
A truce between the Los Angeles inner-city gangs called the Bloods and Crips frightened law enforcement officials. If the Bloods and the Crips weren't killing each other, they might be able to sit down and form an alliance.
The reference sheet lists Trady, Lil C-Style and Snoop Dogg as the writers of the song. The background vocals are credited to Fusky, DJ Pooh and Snoop Dogg. The beat was produced by Snoop, DJ Pooh and LT Hutton. Snoop and DJ Pooh arranged the track, and the drums were done by Young Buck, and the track was mixed by DJ Pooh. The 12th track on the original album is titled Funk With Your Brain, and it's indicated as Funk With Your Brain on the reference sheet. This track was not released on the WideAwake release, but was released on another WideAwake release, and that was on the Snoop Dogg album Death Row The Lost Sessions in 2009. And on that album the track is indicated as an interlude with a track duration of 2 minutes and 32 seconds, and Snoop Dogg doesn't rap on it, but he does some talking over the beat. And as you can see on the track list for the original LBC Crew album, the track duration of this track is 7 minutes and 57 seconds, making it much longer than the interlude on the Lost Sessions album. And on this version they also added some extra verses from Trady and McGruff that cannot be heard on the version that was on the Lost Sessions.
This funk was produced to make your trunk come loose. To tell the truth, ain't nothing Snoop proof. We came to invade and break. Khaki suits, Stacy boots, and great cascade.
You, cause you knows nada. Your mother, J Money's my brother. And trust like a dog when we going deep close.
You think we can do funk with your brain?
As you can see on the reference sheet, it lists the Queen of Funk, Kevin Bernardo and Snoop Dogg as the track writers. The raps are credited to Trady and McGruff, and the background vocals were done by Salim H. Grant, Bo Rock, Snoop, Kevin Bernardo and also the Queen of Funk. Snoop Dogg arranged the track and it was mixed by LT Hutton, who also produced the track. The next track is titled Blueberry, which is the 13th track on the original album, so that means that we almost made
it to the last song in this motherfucker.
As you can see on the reference sheet, the track is titled as Indo Blueberry. This track was also released on the WideAwake album, and on that album it's also the 13th track. I already mentioned in the beginning of this video that this track was also released on Snoop Dogg's album Tha Doggfather, and on that version the beginning of the track where Snoop Dogg is talking over the beat was cut off. And in that intro Snoop Dogg also mentions Sam Snead, who was the producer of this track.
Sam Snead is your whip man, yeah. Is your whip man, hit man. Sam Snead is your whip man, yeah. Hit man.
I'll also make a separate video about Sam Snead in the future, so stay tuned for that. And the full intro can be heard on the original version of the LBC Crew album, as well as on the WideAwake release, but the track duration of the track on the original album is 5 minutes and 29 seconds, which is 22 seconds longer than the WideAwake version. And the reason for the longer track duration is because on the original album an extra outro was added in which Trady announced the last track, and this outro cannot be heard on the WideAwake version nor on the Doggfather version. And this is what Trady said on that outro.
Yeah, concluding on the G note, but we ain't through slanging this D-Zo. To all you riders, roughnecks, and hood rats, this that bomb shit we giving the hood back. And to all you marks, cowards, hooks, and busters, you sucker motherfuckers still can't touch us. Cause this how we do it, Doggystyle. And now, a word from our sponsor.
The reference sheet shows that This, Corrupt, Badass and Prince Idol Joe are the writers of the song. They forgot to mention Techniec because he also has a verse on this track. Prince Idol Joe is also listed for the background vocals. And if you want to know more about Prince Idol Joe, make sure to check out the bio video that's on the channel. And as I just mentioned, the beat was produced and mixed by Sam Snead. And in my opinion, this is one of the hardest beats on the Doggfather as well as on the LBC Crew album. And that brings us to the last track of the original album. The track title is Hit Rocks, and this track was not released on the WideAwake version in 2011, but in 2000 Hit Rocks was already released on the Death Row Snoop Dogg album titled Dead Man Walking, and on that version the track duration is 5 minutes and 48 seconds, which is about 1 minute longer than the version that was on the original LBC Crew album. And the reason for that is that on the Dead Man Walking version, they added an extra part at the beginning of the track, and on the version that was intended for the original LBC Crew album, the track starts right at this part.
You know you gotta have hard. I told you from the start. If I'm again, I'm in it for life. Always stay down and keep my motherfucking game tight.
On the version that was released on the Dead Man Walking album, the track starts off with the chorus first. At the beginning of the track that was released on the Dead Man Walking album, you can also hear a few lines that are not included on the version that was on the original LBC Crew album.
Now when I wake up in the morning and I get up out my bed, I feel good, oh yes I do, 'cause I still can give it up, oh yeah.
Hit Rocks was also released on Snoop Dogg's underground album Smokefest, and on the tracklist you can see that the title was spelled with double C, and this version starts at the same part as the version from the original LBC Crew album, only this is a different mixdown of the beat.
You know you gotta have hard, yeah. I told you from the start. If I'm again, I'm in it for life. Always stay down to keep my motherfucking game tight.
The version that was released on the Smokefest album was also released on the bootleg album titled Fuck Death Row. And Hit Rocks was also used in the skit at the end of the track Dog Pound Gangsters that was released on the Dog Pound's Dog Food album.
That's 310-DAPOUND W Balls 187.4 FM on your dial, motherfucker.
The reference sheet shows that the track was written by Snoop Dogg and DJ Pooh, and Lil C-Style is also credited as the writer of the track, but he didn't do a verse or any vocals on this record. So I don't know if he helped out with writing the track, or maybe they made a mistake on this reference sheet, because the credits on the Dead Man Walking album only list Snoop Dogg and Mark Jordan as writers of the track, and Mark Jordan is DJ Pooh's real name. The beat is arranged by Snoop Dogg, and DJ Pooh also produced the beat, and I also think this is one of the hardest tracks on the album. And later a remake was also released on the album No Limit Top Dog, and this track was titled Bustin' Rocks, and on that track Snoop Dogg uses the same lyrics he also used on Hit Rocks, but over a different beat, which was produced by DJ Quick.
You know you gotta have hard. I told you it's from the start. If I'm again, I'm in it for life. Always stay down and keep my motherfucking game tight.
So there was a breakdown of all the tracks that were intended for the original LBC Crew album, and there were also a couple of tracks that were released on the WideAwake album that are not on the original album tracklist, but were also recorded during the studio sessions for the original album. And I also want to cover those in this video. And the first track is titled Doggfather's Disciple. This is the 7th track on the WideAwake release. Featured artists on this track are Techniec, Badass, Trady and Bullrock. And at the beginning of the track a reference is also made to 187.4 FM W Balls.
The Doggfather. You know where to find it. 187.4 FM W Balls.
Online you can also find an alternate version of this track with a different beat mixdown, and also an extra verse from Badass can be heard on this version.
We don't play LBC every day and all night. Trump tight, tighter than a lighter and a joint. Fuel and flint, spark and flame, smell the scent.
The next track that was released on the WideAwake album that was not on the tracklist for the original album is titled Jackass Reunion, it was produced by Tha. Featured artists are Techniec, Badass and Lil C-Style, and the singer who does the chorus is not credited. Snoop Dogg also says some things on this track, but he doesn't drop any verses. A fun fact is that on the track titled One Life to Live, that was released on Snoop Dogg's album The Lost Sessions in 2009, the same singer can be heard singing the same lyrics from the chorus of Jackass Reunion at the beginning of the track, but instead of 95, he says 94.
9-4 with a brand new thing, dog pound with a gangster swing, and we just gonna hang, and I still got my motherfucking gangster name. 9-5 is a brand new thing, dog pound with a gangster swing, and I'm just gonna hang, and I still got my motherfucking gangster name.
Now let's go over to the next track that was released on the LBC Crew album by WideAwake that was not on the tracklist for the original album, and that track is titled Gangsta. The beat was produced by Tha, and this track features Snoop Dogg as well as South Central, Badass, Techniec and Lil C-Style. There's also an alternate version of this track with a different mix out of the beat that you can find online. It's very similar to the version that was released on the WideAwake album, but it has some extra vocals and also some extra ad-libs.
DPGC, and you know that's right. Move your body from left to right. Come on, everybody, let's rock tonight. West Coast flavor coming extra tight. DPGC, and you know that's right. DPGC, and you know that's right. Move your body from left to right. Come on, everybody, let's rock tonight. West Coast flavor coming extra tight. DPGC, and you know that's right.
The last track we'll cover in this video is the Out the Moon remix by Tha. It was released as a bonus track on the WideAwake album. This version has a completely different beat as the original version, and Tha also says some things at the beginning of this track.
Yeah, 1996, that the funky remix.
All vocals of the featured artist on this track are the same as the original version of Out the Moon, and this is the same version where Lil C-Style's verse can be heard instead of Tupac's verse.
And you know that 19 out the moon and my speakers go boom, boom, boom.
So now you know everything about the original LBC Crew album and the differences compared to the WideAwake album that was released in 2011. Let me know in the comments which tracks from the LBC Crew are your personal favorites, and if you have anything to add to this video, also make sure to drop a comment below. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I would highly appreciate that. Many more videos are coming soon.
Cause it don't stop. And so when you hit a boom, make room, fool, watch out.